Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne Ward, a member of the Friends of Folk Art Board. Welcome to the second lecture of our 2021 program year. Before we listen to Ann, I want to tell you about our World of Treasures online auction coming up November 19th through 22nd. I think you'll see the flyer on your screen, and we've also sent it to you today along with the Zoom link. We created this event to make up the revenue we lost when we had to cancel the folk art flea in June. Our goal is to raise $55,000 for the museum education and exhibition programs. If you love the flea, you are going to love this auction. We have received an incredible array of donations of items and experiences. There's something for everyone, no matter what your interests are. And if you're not collecting anymore, our Good Karma Corner offers other ways to support the museum's work to continue taking our education programs to the community. To everyone who's donated an item or contributed to our experiences, a huge thank you. And if you can do just one more thing, we would so appreciate everyone's help to promote the auction by sharing this flyer electronically or printing them and handing them to friends, and inviting your network of friends to register, bid, and bid often. And now, Friends of Folk Art Board President Ellen Premack.
Hi, everybody. We've been talking about birds, but now we'll get down to business. I just want to start out by thanking Kathy Campbell.
We can't hear you.
Okay, there I am.
Okay.
I just want to start out by saying thank you to Kathy Campbell and Ginger Williams and the programming team for putting together our lecture series. They're doing an outstanding job, and we're really glad to have Ann here today. If you're joining us as a FOFA member, we welcome you. And if you are not a member of our organization, please consider joining. We know who you are, and we would love to have you become a member and join our fun group, because we really are fun people who love interesting things and more. You can join us by going to the Museum of New Mexico Foundation site to fill out an application, or you can get in touch with somebody on the board who you might know. So today we're pleased to have photographer, author, artist, and traveler Ann Murdy. She has been documenting Day of the Dead ceremonies in Mexico for over 20 years. Her knowledge and images are stunning. And she is originally a native of Southern California who lives currently in Santa Fe. And she started collecting Chicano art in the 1990s. That's what got her started in all of this. She's drawn to Mexico because of its vibrancy, its culture, and the traditions. Today, she's going to present to us images and stories from her book, On the Path of Marigolds, Living Traditions of Mexico's Day of the Dead. And it is a gorgeous book. She's received honorable mention in the 2020 International Latino Book Awards and won the Gold Award in the Multicultural Division of the 2019 Forward Indies Book Awards. Her book is available in Santa Fe at Collected Works, through the Museum of New Mexico Foundation website, on Amazon, or directly from the publisher. And what I'm going to do is Ann sent such a complete email of exactly the links to go to that we're going to make sure you receive that email so you can purchase her book. In any case, welcome, Ann Murdy, and thank you so much for being here. We're very excited.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So I need to, let me just start with sharing the screen. And we will get started. So once again, I'd like to thank the Friends of Folk Art for inviting me to do my presentation today. And I'd also like to thank all of you in attendance during these strange times. So this is a really perfect alternative to getting the word out about my book. So I thank you all for being here today. So let's get started. I am going to talk to you about Day of the Dead. So Day of the Dead is a celebration of life. It is known as Day of the Dead or Dia De Los Muertos. This joyous celebration takes place on All Saints' Day, which is a day, November 1st, and on All Souls' Day, November 2nd. In some communities in Mexico, All Saints' Day is when the spirits of the children return. They are known as angelitos, little angels. All Souls' Day is when the spirits of the adults return. They are known as the difuntos, the deceased. It's a time families in Mexico honor and celebrate the lives of those who are no longer with us by constructing home altars or ofrendas in their memory and visiting their graves. An altar brings a loved one back to life. Families place what the individual enjoyed eating or drinking while they were alive on the altar. Additionally, ofrendas include mementos, a photo of the individual, and a glass of water, along with pan de muerto, which is bread of the dead. The altars are adorned with yellow-orange marigold flowers, whose potent scent helps guide the spirits back to the home. A pathway of marigold petals is sprinkled from the outside of the house to the foot of the altar inside the home. This pathway and candles on the altar also aid in guiding the souls back to the home. Sweet-smelling copal, an incense-like resin, is burned to aid in communication with the spirits. In some states, such as Oaxaca, the altar has a marigold arch known as an arco. The archway is the passageway from the land of the dead to the land of the living. Altars vary from community to community. In some communities, the altar is made up of 3 tiers, one for birth, one for life, and one for death. A glass of water is placed on the altar to quench the thirst of the soul as it has traveled a long way to return to earth. It is believed the spirits take the essence of the food and the living eat it afterwards. So for those of you who are not familiar with my book, it is about three rural communities in Mexico: Huacachula, Puebla, Teotitlan del Valle in Oaxaca, and the communities around Lake Pátzcuaro. So now let's look at some photographs of how people decorate their altars and the graves. This is a beautifully decorated grave in one of the lakeside communities along Lake Pátzcuaro. This is an altar for an angelito, a little angel, in Teotitlan del Valle. This is the cemetery in Huacachula. This is another beautifully decorated grave along one of the villages along Lake Pátzcuaro. This is an altar viejo from Huacachula, and I'll explain more about this later. This is a beautiful home altar for an adult that passed away in Santa Fe de Laguna, which is on the north shore of Lake Pátzcuaro. And here's the cemetery in Santa Fe de Laguna. This is a decorated grave in Teotitlan del Valle. This is a mariachi musician serenading a loved one with their favorite song. This is a beautiful altar or ofrenda in Teotitlan del Valle. This is the path of marigolds. And this is where that pathway ends up at an altar for a child, actually a baby, in Huacachula, Puebla. For myself, building an altar aids in the grieving process. It is cathartic, meditative, and it creates a sense of peace. An altar is also a magnet that draws the soul of the deceased from the land of the dead to the land of the living. It brings the individual back to life during the time that it is in the home. People in Mexico decorate the graves at the cemeteries with flowers, food, and candles. It is a joyous fiesta that is full of life. In some communities, families spend the entire night with their loved ones. Some families, they will even hire a mariachi band to serenade the dead with their favorite songs. It is the complete opposite of visiting a cemetery here in the United States, because when we visit a tomb of someone from our family or a close friend, usually all we know about is the day they were born, the day they died, and perhaps a few words. It is the complete opposite of building an altar, because the altar brings them back to life. In 2017, I decided to create a book featuring my photos on how Day of the Dead is celebrated in the rural communities in Mexico. I was concerned that popular culture was becoming more important than authentic culture. Here in the United States, this beautiful tradition seemed to be evolving into a Mexican version of Halloween. Also, the popular animated Disney film, the Disney Pixar film Coco, set in one of the villages I visited, had a huge influence on the celebration in Mexico. Since 1991, I have been documenting how Day of the Dead has been celebrated, and it's becoming commercialized, unfortunately. Here in the United States, Mattel has come out with the Day of the Dead Barbie doll for the last 2 years, which sold out immediately at the retail price of $75. Kellogg's cereal has come out with a Day of the Dead cereal that's only being sold in Mexico. On October 15th, Nike announced their new line of Air Jordan sneakers dedicated to Day of the Dead. The 3-color scheme, according to their press release, is deeply rooted in the colors of the traditional floral ofrendas, the deep yellow color of the marigold and the magenta color of celosia or cresta de gallo. On the side, toward the front of the shoe, familia, which means family, is inscribed. Nike said this inscription is to remind us what Day of the Dead is all about. The animated movie Coco was released in Mexico on October 27, 2017. It opened in wide release in the United States a month later. This movie revolves around 2 main characters, a young boy named Miguel and his great-grandmother, Mama Coco, who both live in the village Santa Cecilia. His village was based on the Purépecha community of Santa Fe de Laguna, founded in 1533 on the north shore of Lake Pátzcuaro. It is known for its pottery. I documented this village in 2017 and 2018. I was there on both October 31st and November 1st. In 2017, on November 1st, it was relatively peaceful until I left at 9 p.m., which is when all the tourist buses arrived. In 2017, on November 1st, it was packed with huge amounts of tourist buses when I arrived at 6:30 in the evening. It was now a major tourist attraction. It took on a Disneyland transformation. On October 31st, young girls dressed in their traditional clothing had half of their faces painted as skeletons to greet us. There was a market set up on the plaza, and it was selling not the beautiful pottery that's made in this village, but they were selling plaster statues of Mama Coco and Miguel from the movie Coco, made in China. Small children were running around the streets carrying plastic pumpkins, yelling trick or treat. Even one of the directors from Coco was in town on November 1st. None of this is a part of their authentic indigenous culture. In fact, when you visit this village, you don't hear them speaking Spanish. They're speaking their native indigenous language, which is Purépecha. Prior to the release of Coco, the people in this village always went to their cemetery at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on November 2nd. In 2018, the tourists were so upset no one was in their cemetery on November 1st. Santa Fe de Laguna changed their long-standing tradition to have people in the cemetery on the evening of November 1st to accommodate the tourists last year. Mama Coco is based on a real woman who lives in Santa Fe de Laguna. Her name is Maria Salud Ramirez Caballero, who was 107 years old. In 2009, during Day of the Dead, the tourists stood in line on November 1st to go inside her house to meet her and take selfies. Inside her home, she sat in front of an oversized poster from Coco and sold Coco merchandise that was available for purchase. So now I would like to show you how Day of the Dead is being commercialized. These are expats in Santa Fe de Lagunas, painted up as calaveras, and indigenous people do not do this at all. This is Mattel's Barbie doll that sold out this year immediately. It was only on the market for less than a week. This is last year's Mattel's Barbie doll that sold out equally as fast last year. This is Kellogg's Day of the Dead cereal that's now being sold in Mexico. This is the Nike Air Jordan that just came out last month. This is what I saw in Santa Fe Laguna 2 years ago. These little girls all painted up like skeletons. And this is their poster for Day of the Dead this year. So they are continuing to do a market and paint their faces like skeletons. Here is Mama Coco's house. Aquí es la casa de Mama Coco, which is the new tourist destination. And here is Mama Coco with all these fans inside her house. One cannot control change. Of course, the government of Mexico loves the increase in tourism because everybody makes more money. The hotels, restaurants, retail shops, folk artists, cab drivers, bus companies, etc. To capitalize on the success of Coco, the prior administration of President Enrique Peña Nieto had his Secretary of Tourism change the name of Day of the Dead to La Ruta de Coco, the route of Coco. The route of Coco is comprised of the states of Michoacán, Guanajuato, Aguascalientes, and Oaxaca. Tourism in Michoacán increased by 57.4% from 2014 through 2018. In 2018, Airbnb and Pátzcuaro reported it received 114% more tourists compared to 2017 upon the release of Coco. Last year, the state of Michoacán expected to receive 200,000 domestic and foreign tourists. I am thankful I was able to document how Day of the Dead was celebrated before the Ruta de Coco became a part of popular culture. For myself, I am doubtful that many communities will opt out toward pleasing tourists after the release of Coco because of the additional income it provides. My book is a testament to traditions that are authentic in 3 rural communities in Mexico. For myself, Day of the Dead is one of the most beautiful and magical experiences I have ever witnessed in my life. Entering the cemeteries at night, which are only lit by candlelight, is a magical moment. I'm walking on sacred ground, surrounded by a sense of community, which is tranquil, soulful, and heartfelt. It is an ethereal experience. Traveling to Mexico has changed my perception on death and dying. I have learned that as long as we honor our loved ones in this manner, they will live forever. So now I'm going to discuss how Day of the Dead is celebrated in each of the 3 villages in my book. This photograph that we're looking at right now, this is actually taken on the shore of Lake Pátzcuaro in a little village called San Pedro Cucucuchu. The first community in my book is the Nahua village of Huacachula, Puebla, which is known for its white satin monumental altars. Todos Santos, All Saints, which has existed since 1540, is celebrated from October 28th through November 2nd. These are the most important altars in the state of Puebla. The color white represents the purity of the soul. Huacachula is located about 45 minutes southwest of the city of Puebla. 3,000 people live in this village. An individual only receives a monumental altar the first year they pass away. After that, they receive a simple altar, which is known as an altar viejo. Most of these altars are a table with photos, food, flowers, candles, a photo of the individual, and household saints. On October 28th, the souls return that died in accidents, suicide, or by acts of aggression. On October 31st, the souls of the children return up to the age of 18. Everybody else returns on November 1st, which is today. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon on all of the above dates, the church bells begin to ring, announcing the souls have returned to earth. Just minutes before this happens, the doors to the homes open up and families gather outside the house. A family member who was directly related to the individual who passed away carries a huge burner of copal incense. Another person carries a bucket of marigold petals, which they sprinkle in a path from the outside of the house, and it ends up at the foot of the altar inside the home. Copal is then burned over the altar and all the candles are lit. Copal the white smoke that copal produces is supposed to aid in communication with the spirit world. That's why they burn it over the altars. Visitors are taken to an outdoor patio where they are served chicken mole over rice, bean tamales, along with a refreshing glass of agua de Jamaica, agua de tamarindo, or hot chocolate. So I'm going to now show you a map of the state of Puebla in case if you are not familiar with this state in Mexico. So this is the state of Puebla. You can see where that starburst is. That is the city of Puebla, and Huacachula is one of the 3 cities directly below it. And most people are not familiar with monumental altars because the state of Puebla, they don't really promote Todos Santos the way they do in Oaxaca and in Michoacan. So you really get a lot less foreign tourists there. So when I was there for 2 years, from 2014 to 2016, and I hardly saw any Americans, which actually was kind of refreshing. It was mainly Mexican tourists. So I want to pause here to tell you about a monumental altar. Monumental altars have 3 tiers. The first or lower tier represents life on earth for the deceased. It is made up of pleated white satin. This level is known as the underworld. A photo of the deceased is placed on this level. It can only be viewed indirectly with a mirror. The mirror represents the underworld, symbolizing that this person is no longer on earth. Pan de muerto, food, beverages, and a glass of water are on this level too. Candles are placed here to give light to the darkness. 12 paper angels are placed on the 3 tiers representing each month of the year. And there are also sugar figures on this level known as alfinique. So the first tier, if you look at this photograph, is you can see the pleated white satin that's flushed with the floor. And directly above it, you can see a photograph of a man wearing a turquoise jacket and a sombrero. And that is the photograph being reflected in the mirror. So that's a mirror reflection. You can also see below him is the statue of a little crying child. There is Pan de Muerto to the left and right of the child. It's that red color. They actually have 4 different types of Pan de Muerto in this village. And so that basically makes up the first tier. And you can see all the candles in the foreground. And these altars are very complicated to make. They can take probably up to a week, and there's only certain people in the village who can build these altars. So most of the time people have to hire somebody to make these altars, and they are actually illuminated with light. And that's why this altar looks so bright and color bright, because this photograph was taken at night. So like I said, they're very labor intensive, and it's definitely a skill. The second tier represents the union of heaven and earth, the human and the divine. A saint or virgin is added to this tier. Baroque columns support each tier. The white satin fabric is ranged in whimsical folds to resemble clouds. It is stapled into place. So if we look above the photograph of the man, you can see that white satin fabric that is scrunched up. And what you see on this level, it looks like pretzels with white icing, but that's a form of pan de muerto in Huacachula. It's called rosquete. So that's a very different type of bread that you would see only in Huacachula. I've never seen it in, say, Michoacan or Oaxaca. So above it, you can see the angels and the archway, and those bigger loaves is the rosquete. So that is the second tier of the altar. The third tier has a cross placed on it if an adult died. It represents the divine, the celestial apex, and communication with God. So the top tier, as you can see, is on the very top of the photograph. So let's move forward. So I want to pause here. This is an altar viejo. So this is what you would get the second year that you passed away. So as you can see, it looks completely different than a monumental altar, and it's not nearly as expensive to put together because you're just taking, some tables, adding fruit, candles, photographs, and photographs of the deceased. On October 31st, Huacachula celebrates the Plaza Grande. This is a market dedicated to Todos Santos on the Zocalo. It only happens once a year. People from neighboring towns come the night before and set up their stalls. One can purchase candied fruit, flowers, alfanique, the sugar paste animals, chocolate, pan de muerto, fruit, copal incense, polychrome pottery, such as candlestick holders and incense burners, cooking utensils, decorative candles, tin work, flowers made from fabric known as ramos de flores. Early on the morning of November 2nd, the families go to the two cemeteries in town, La Trinidad or Santa Maria. The graves are decorated with daisies, gladiolas, marigolds, magenta cresta de gallo, chrysanthemums, bay leaves, and rosemary. Copal is burned over the tombs. After the graves are decorated, the families return to home for breakfast. At noon on November 2nd, the families open up their homes again to visitors that have come to Huacachula to visit the monumental altars. So now let's look at photographs of how Todos Santos is celebrated in Huacachula. So this is a very classic monumental altar with the fabric behind it. This is the first tier of the monumental altar. You can see the mirror reflection with the statues of the crying children on either side. This is an altar for a couple that got killed in a car accident. This is an altar for a man who was killed in a street fight, and his little girls are viewing the altar. This is an altar for a baby that died. And I just want to pause on this image. This is a monumental for a little girl who died, and this was built by a very well altar builder in Huacachula. His name is Eugenio Reyes. He has actually been invited to go to London, England, and construct one of these monumental altars, and he's built another one in Toronto, Canada. And he built this altar for his granddaughter that passed away. And if you look on the bottom tier where the pleated fabric is, if you look to the left, you can see the little girl's dress with a little, kind of looks like a fall autumn print, and her little white shoes. And then if you look to the right, you can see a little red dress with rickrack on it. I found it incredibly touching, just so sweet. Here, the women are shredding the marigold flowers so they can make the pathway. And here's one of those pathways that ends at the foot of the home altar. This is an altar for a school teacher that passed away. This photograph was taken right at 2 o'clock when the candles are lit and the copal was burned. This photograph was taken shortly thereafter. This is an altar viejo. This is an altar for an adult man that passed away. This is another altar viejo. This is an altar for a man that got killed in a car accident. This is another monumental altar, very unique, that it's shaped like a church. This is the market, the Plaza Grande market that takes place on the 31st. Here's a lady buying her pan de muerto, and as I mentioned, there's 4 different types of pan de muerto sold in this village. Here's a flower vendor. This is the alfinique. I have only seen this form of sugar work done in Huacachula. This is the entrance to the cemetery Santa Maria. This is a mariachi group serenading a loved one with their favorite tunes. And this is people decorating the graves in the cemetery. So the next community in my book is Teotitlán del Valle. Teotitlán del Valle is an indigenous Zapotec village that is located about 40 minutes southeast of the city of Oaxaca. Around 5,600 people live here. The village is known for its rug weaving. La Festividad de los Muertos, the Festival of the Dead, has existed since pre-Columbian times. People in this village celebrate the lives of the children from October 31st through November 1st before the adults arrive. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on November 1st, bottle rockets are shot into the air and the church bells ring nonstop for the next 24 hours. And so at this hour, all the doors to the homes open up once the bottle rockets are shot into the air and the church bells start ringing. So this ritual concludes with another round of bottle rockets on November 2nd. The candles, so once the doors to the homes are open, candles are lit and incense, copal incense is burned to bless the altars. Families walk from house to house to bring a candle and pan de muerto to add to the altar. These visitations can last as late as 2 o'clock in the morning. When visiting a home in Teotitlán del Valle, the host will greet you and invite you to sit down at a long table to partake in the fiesta, which is perpendicular to the altar. They will offer you a huge plate of pan de muerto, hot chocolate, beer, mezcal. Upon leaving, they will give you food from the altar, such as fruit and nuts to take home with you, along with maybe some chocolate, so you can make some hot chocolate. It's a wonderful tradition. October 31st is a day full of activity in the village. On this day, villagers flood the market to buy items needed for the altar. This is known as El Dia de la Plaza. The market is full of flowers such as marigold, cresta de gallo, and a lavender flower called Flor de Muerto. Inside the market, there are stacks upon stacks of pan de muerto being sold. In the outdoor area of the market, people are busy purchasing apples, oranges, jicama, bananas, cacao for making hot chocolate, peanuts, pecans, candles, copal, and bamboo to form the arco that will go over the altar. The bamboo arch is the passageway for the spirit to leave the world of the dead and enter the world of the living. Upon returning from the market, women get busy by making food and drink to put on the altar. There are tamales made especially for this time of year, which are filled with chicken and covered with an orange red sauce made from chilies guajillo, masa, yerba santo, and chicken soup. They are wrapped in corn husk before they are steamed in an olla pot. Women also prepare tejate, a refreshing drink made from cacao and maize and hot chocolate. Once the church bells stop ringing at 3 o'clock on November 2nd, the villagers slowly make their way to the cemetery. Inside the cemetery, there's a small chapel, which is known as a capilla. It is filled with the sound of men known as rezadores, literally men who perform songs of prayer, kneeling on the ground and singing a cappella. These men have the most unusual voices that produce a strong, piercing melody, rich in tonality, filled with sadness and lament. Outside in the cemetery, the mood is more upbeat and festive as families are reflecting on the lives of their loved ones as they keep vigil by the graves. There are mariachi musicians that serenade the dead. The people do gather in the cemeteries in the evening, seated around the graves and keeping vigil. So now let's look at photographs of how La Festividad de los Muertos is celebrated in Teotitlán del Valle. So I'm just going to pause here again. So for those of you who have not ever been to Oaxaca, the red with the pinpoint is Oaxaca City, and to the immediate far right is the town of Teotitlán del Valle. This photograph was taken right at 3 o'clock once the church bells started ringing and the woman is lighting the candle on the altar. This couple is Alberto and Gloria, and they are building their home altar. This couple is visiting a home and they're adding a candle and bread to add to the altar. This is another home altar. Our Lady of Guadalupe is very popular in this village. This is an altar for somebody who just passed away, and that's why you see those two sand paintings in front of the altar. Here's another beautiful altar with Our Lady of Guadalupe. I love this ofrenda with the big pan de muerto on the head of the angel. I think it's hysterical. And another beautiful home altar with Our Lady of Guadalupe. And we have another beautiful home altar. You can see all the bread and the santos to the far right. Here is the indoor bread market. You can see just stacks and stacks of bread being sold. The whole market smells fabulous. Now we're in the outdoor area of the market where they're selling the flowers. This is Flor de Muerto. This flower is very traditional in Teotitlán del Valle. It only grows up in the hills. These women are buying their Cresto de Gallo. Here, the women are buying some fruit, and the woman in the foreground is carrying the Flor de Muerto. This is Marcelina, and she is making hot chocolate. This is Petra, and she's wrapping up her tamale with the corn husk. This is Antoinetta, and she is making tejate. And this is Irene, who is wrapping up her tamale with a corn husk. This lady is taking the tamales out of the olla pot. This couple is adding the finishing touches to their tomb. This woman is having a great time partying as she's listening to the mariachi musician in the background. Here is the wide angle shot of the cemetery. You can see it's just filled with flowers. It's like being a florist shop, and it smells wonderful. These are the rezadores who are singing to release the spirits back to the land of the dead. And this is a woman just having like a private moment in memory in the cemetery. So the last part of my book is dedicated to the communities around Lake Pátzcuaro in the state of Michoacán. In the state of Michoacán, along Lake Pátzcuaro, the indigenous Purépecha people celebrate La Noche de Ánimas, the Night of the Souls, on November 1st. Little is known about the pre-Hispanic traditions due to the fact that when the Spanish arrived in Michoacán in 1530, they destroyed most of their codices. The primary document that's still in existence is by Fray Martín de Jesús from 1540. There is no discussion in his writings about the afterlife. It is believed the afterlife was similar to life on earth because the souls lingered near the home before they started their journey to the other side. Today, the celebration is a private affair of the family. The preparation of the altars in many of the lakeside communities starts on October 30th. Wild bamboo is used for the rectangular frames that decorate the graves and the home altars. Inside the frames are designs of crosses, hearts, fruits such as apples, oranges, bananas, bread in the shapes of souls, figures of animals made from sugar, and candles. The food represents the bounty of the heavens. Typical foods prepared during this time of year are pozole, casseroles of rice, plates of beans, enchiladas, fruits, pumpkin cooked with sugar, along with bowls of candies and chocolates. Liquid refreshments can consist of Coca-Cola, beer, pulque, an alcoholic beverage made from sugar and tequila. The bamboo frames are covered with hundreds and hundreds of miracles until the green color of the bamboo can no longer be seen. A straw mat on the floor becomes a mountain of fruit. On November 1st, these frames are taken from the homes and placed on the grave if this was the first year the individual died. So also you have to know that these frames are very symbolic because they show the four elements of nature, which are earth, the aroma of food, wind, a moving object such as papel picado, water, a glass of water for the returning soul, and fire, wax candles. Salt is placed on the altar for purification. The straw mat placed in front of the altar is for the soul to rest. Most communities around Lake Pátzcuaro visit the graves on the evening of November 1st. Families spend the entire night in the cemetery. One of the most popular cemeteries around the lake is in Zunzan. Here one can see elaborate floral decorations such as three-dimensional floral sculptures and two-dimensional murals made from flowers as well. In the Purépecha village of Santa Fe Laguna, the doors of the homes open up at 6 o'clock on the evenings of October 31st and November 1st, only for the people that died that year. The lives of the children are honored on the 31st, whereas the lives of the adults are honored on November 1st. There is a marigold arch over the front door of the homes where there has been a death that year. A path of marigold petals from the street winds its way to the foot of the altar inside the home. Upon entering the home, visitors present the hostess with a basket of fruit and candles. A straw mat in front of the altar becomes a mountain of fruit made up of bananas, oranges, and apples. Atole and pozole are served to the visitors. In the past, this village always went to the cemetery on November 2nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. People spent the afternoon decorating the graves and listening to a mass held in the cemetery to honor those who died that year. So let's move on and look at La Noche de Ánimas around Lake Pátzcuaro. So I want to pause here again. And you can see there are quite a few villages around Lake Pátzcuaro. I've spent actually the photographs in my book were taken during 4 separate trips, because this is basically a one-night event. So there's no way you can get to all these villages in one night. And the traffic is horrendous. It's like driving to Taos during Fiesta. It's a 2-lane road and traffic just barely moves. And then once you get to your destination, then you have to try to find parking. So there's a real skill to try to get there before all the tourist buses arrive. So the very top of the map, you see Santa Fe de Laguna, and this is the village that was used as the inspiration for Miguel's village in the movie Coco, and they called it Santa Cecilia. And if you kind of wind around the lake, going to the west, dropping straight down, you see a black dot with a orange-red circle around it. That's Zinzunzan. Zinzunzan is really popular because of how beautifully the graves are decorated. Then as you drop straight down and head to the west again, you see another black circle with red around it, and you see Iguazio, and above it is San Pedro Cucucucho. Those are both really wonderful places to take photographs. And so I have actually taken photographs in 9 of these communities. I've taken photographs on the west side, the south side, and I've actually even gone to the island of Picanda and the island of Janicio, which are on Lake Pátzcuaro. So let's look at La Noche de Ánimas in the communities around Lake Pátzcuaro. This is in Zinzunzan. This was taken on the afternoon of November 1st. People are gathering there right now. I don't know if they are. I've heard various stories. This is another South Side community. This is in Zinzunzan as well. If there wasn't a pandemic, they would be there. This is a home altar for an adult that died in Santa Fe de Laguna, just incredibly beautiful. This is another altar for an adult that passed away, and the woman that's kneeling is chanting the rosary. This is another home altar for a woman that died in Santa Fe Laguna. I love how they put her clothing on the wall. This is another home altar for an adult male that died in Santa Fe de Laguna. And this is another altar in Santa Fe Laguna. You can see all the fruit on the straw mat. Probably by the end of the night, the fruit's going to be up to the top of the cross. This is another altar for an adult that died in Santa Fe Laguna. You can see the marigolds are strung from the ceiling, a lovely touch. This is the island of Janicio. They have an event for the children that died on the morning of November 1st, excuse me, from 6 in the morning to 9. This is another altar in grave in Zinzunzan. Here's another grave for a child that died in Zinzunzan. This was taken in Iguazio, which is the community we saw on the map. This is a detailed shot of what those frames look like. You can see the sugar figures, the fruit, a lovely touch. This was taken in Iguazio at dawn. You can see the people are asleep at the grave. This was taken on the island of Picanda, and the woman in the background is actually asleep. This was taken in Zinzunzan. This was taken in Iguazio. This was taken on the island of Picanda. I'd probably say of all the places I've visited, this was the most magical. This was taken on one of the west side villages. It's a family affair. You can see the mother with her little boy and the people in back of her. This is dawn in Zinzunzan. And this is the photograph. that is the cover of my book, which was taken at dawn in Iwatsuo. And that lighting only lasts for about 5 minutes. So I felt very fortunate that I got the shot because it has that beautiful glow from the candle lights. But you can see in the background, the sky is turning a bluish gray. It was actually foggy that morning. This will be my final commentary on how tourism is affecting authentic culture. The influence of popular culture has been an issue ever since I went to Oaxaca in 1991, when I saw school children in Halloween processions dressed as vampires, witches, and ghosts. I've seen the Halloween colors of orange and black incorporated into home altars and papel picados. Both foreign and Mexican tourists have become increasingly disrespectful over the years, showing up in the cemeteries painted as calaveras and taking selfies of themselves while family are trying to have a peaceful reunion with their loved ones. I'm a tourist too. However, I have always been respectful. I received permission to take photos in all the homes. I never posed anybody. I've been horrified by tourists showing up in the homes, not asking permission to take photos, setting up lighting while prayers were taking place without asking permission, and not bringing an offering for the altar. This is not a Disneyland attraction. How would we like to be at a memorial service at a graveside for one of our loved ones and a bunch of tourists showed up painted as skeletons and started taking selfies? I'm doubtful that the situation will improve, which saddens me. What we have here is a double-edged sword. Anthropologist Stanley Brandis, who holds a PhD from UC Berkeley, also shares his concern about the impact of tourism and ritual change in his book, published in 2007, titled Skulls to the Living, Bread to the Dead, Day of the Dead in Mexico and Beyond. In closing, I am thankful for the opportunity to document this beautiful celebration of life for 27 years. As I was given permission to take photos in the homes, I made sure all the families received prints of their altars as a gift of gratitude. I believe it's important to give back to the community. Witnessing and experiencing this joyous manner of honoring our dead has enriched my life. I am grateful for all these experiences and to partake in the spirit of Mexico. Thank you so much, and that concludes my presentation on Day of the Dead. So I don't know if you have this set up for questions, but if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And I just have a comment. There's a book that just came out by the Getty Foundation that's about historic cities and the impact of tourism on these places and just how it's totally undermined them. There's the one that many people know about, which is Venice, of course. But most places, or a lot of places in Italy, have really been taken over. And you can go around the world and you can see just how the impact of tourism on these places has really modified it. I thought I was a Peace Corps volunteer 50 years ago in Colombia, and the city of Cartagena was in this wondrous state of benign neglect, and it was spectacular. And it's called Cartagena la Heroica, the heroic. And so now it's called Cartagena la Turística, and it's not an improvement. And this is a situation that's come over every place. You can go to Luang Prabang in Laos and you go, where's the people? And the people have all left so that they can rent it out to the backpackers and the tourists to stay in these little houses that are okay. But, you know, frankly, it's the people that make these places really wonderful. And that impact has just been negative so many places over.
Well, personally, I did not expect the movie Coco to have that kind of effect on culture in Mexico. I feel very fortunate. I was in Santa Fe de Laguna. I call it BC before Coco and AC after Coco. And I thought that more people would definitely get interested in going to Mexico for Day of the Dead, but I never imagined that it would just be transformed. I mean, it was so crowded in 2018. It was horrible. I will never go back there again. They ruined it. And
yeah,
they're going to just continue doing it because Day of the Dead is the biggest celebration in Mexico. So it draws the biggest amount of tourists. And like I said, it's a double-edged sword. Most of these people are not wealthy who are the folk artists. So if they can make extra money during Day of the Dead, by all means, they're going to continue to promote cocoa to get more tourists to their communities.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's all the commercial aspects of things. And
Right.
they've changed these cities to accommodate tourism, and they've pushed the real people out because they're taking up spaces so they can put in these, horrible boutique little places that sell stuff. And it's really, it's very disheartening, but that's what's going on over
Yeah,
there.
like I said, you can't control change. And
No, but it
that's-
has to be, doesn't always have to be changed for the worst.
no,
That's
it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I was really horrified when I saw those plaster statues of Mama Coco and Miguel made in China. It was because the village is known for their pottery. They have beautiful pottery. So, okay, if you're going to do an outdoor market during Day of the Dead, then sell what the artisans make in the village instead of selling junk from China.
Yeah. There's a group in Ecuador, they're the Otavaleñan Indians that are well known for their weaving. And if you go to Quito, you go north into Otavalo, and you used to be able to find these spectacular weavings. Well, it's all gone. And what there is right now are these horrible inflatable Chinese plastic dolls that have nothing to do with anything. And that's what the market is. And you go, really? And you go, wow, that's not progress.
They're doing the same thing in Oaxaca and in Michoacan. They're selling these embroidered bags, and they kind of look like those piano shawls with the beautiful floral embroidery. And they're selling those and saying that they're made in Mexico and they're being made in China.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
people,
Chinese have taken it upon themselves to knock off everybody's artisan product.
that's true.
And there's, I mean, look at the spirit catchers or whatever you call them here. They're made in China. A lot of them, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, anyway.
I was in Teotihuacan in just last year, 2019. And I didn't see the influence of cocoa in the cemetery at all.
No, you don't see it. No, because in the movie Coco, Teotihuacan del Valle did not play any type of role in that movie.
Okay.
So
Because
that's
it was, I mean, they did have a market as you entered the cemetery, and there were a lot of tourists, but it was locals. A lot of, handmade skeleton figures and things like that. But it was very respectful in both the old and the new cemeteries.
yeah, I haven't been to Oaxaca since 2015, and there wasn't any market outside the market in 2015.
Yeah,
They're
I
just selling food. That's what they were doing in 2000.
I can believe that. Yeah, that was kind of odd. We went to another little one and I can't remember the name. And they only had food vendors, and it was later at night. I can't remember what time, but they had dueling bands and everyone was dancing, and it was so beautiful to watch. I get chills when I think about it. Just the sheer celebration of the lives of their family members.
So you were in Teotihuacan del Valle last year. Were the rezadores inside the capilla singing?
I'm sorry.
When you were in Teotihuacan del Valle last year, did you go inside the capilla in the cemetery and hear them?
I did not. We had a guide and we did not do that.
Oh, that's too bad. It's sort of like the penitentes here in New Mexico.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen that.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love the way they sing. It's just, it's heartwarming.
I did not have that privilege.
Oh, that's too bad because it's really beautiful. Any other questions?
And there's a question in the chat, Anne, from Linda, about, are the families able to continue to honor their dead with care despite, and then there's somebody else chat, despite the extra tourists?
Yes, well, okay, so 2018, the people were still there. I mean, their homes were, the homes are open. I've only been to Santa Fe Laguna to see the home altars. Actually, this year, Santa Fe Laguna, they're not going to have any of the homes open this year. They're all closed. So there will not be visitations. And most of the Teotihuacan del Valle, they will be going to the homes tonight. Everybody has to wear a mask, but their cemetery will be closed tomorrow. So that's off limits. So Oaxaca City has completely shut down. There's nothing going on in Oaxaca City. No cemetery visits, no parades, no sand painting, nothing. So Oaxaca is totally shut down. So people, in some way, it might be nicer this year for the people that live in the villages, because when people go to their homes to visit the altars, it'll just be people in the community and they won't be dealing with all these tourists. So it might be kind of refreshing for them in that respect.
And what happens with those monumental altars after the Day of the Dead? I mean, they're very elaborate. Where do they go?
Well, Huacachula has a very interesting tradition. Those altars stay up until the 1-year anniversary of the person's death. Whereas in Michoacan and in Oaxaca, the altars will probably come down like the 3rd or 4th. But because those altars are so labor intensive, they have a different custom of keeping them up until the 1-year anniversary.
Wow. Do they replicate them the next year, or is the next year something entirely different?
Next year, they get that altar viejo, like just a table with some fruit, candles, and photographs of the person. So it's only the first year you die that you get a monumental altar. And after that, you get an altar viejo.
I see. Okay.
And Huacachula is open today. They're having visitations to the home. So I don't know if they're going to go to the cemetery tomorrow, but they are allowing people into the homes, but you have to wear a mask.
This is a fabulous talk, and your photographs are just wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
When was the last time you were in Michoacan?
2 years ago.
Okay, and you felt it was safe?
Oh yeah, I travel by myself.
Okay.
I travel by myself. I'm not fluent in Spanish. I know enough Spanish to get by. So my boyfriend has gone with me. 1 year he went with me to Teotihuacan del Valle, and 1 year he went with me to Pátzcuaro. But being that I'm a photographer, I have to kind of be on my own schedule, and lighting is really critical. Now, to take these photographs that were taken at dawn, I've had drivers that I've used for years. They're very dependable. And in 2018, I think I had my driver pick me up at 4:30 in the morning, because I'd never photographed Zinzunsan at night and I wanted to be there for dawn. And then in 2017, I had my driver pick me up at 5 o'clock, because Iguazio is only 20 minutes from Pátzcuaro. So most people are not going to want to get up that early. But like I said, that's why I travel on my own, because I can work at my own pace. And my drivers, they're wonderful guys. Basically, I have them park and I pay them while they wait in the car for me. And I say, okay, I'll see you later. And I go out and take my photographs, and then they come back. It's an easy job because they can just relax. They don't have to deal with the traffic. And you can take collectivos to get to these communities around the lake. But when I was in Teotihuacan del Valle, I stayed in the village. And when I was in Huacachula, I stayed in the village. So there, in Teotihuacan del Valle, I took the tuk-tuks to get to the homes. And in Huacachula, since it's a small community of only 3,000 people, I walked to all the homes with the monumental altars. But in the communities around Lake Pátzcuaro, you have to have a car. So you can either hire a cab, or you can take a tour, and then you're on a specific time schedule, or you can take a collectivo. But the collectivos get really crowded.
Oh, yeah, I bet they're full.
Maybe toward the end of the evening, you may not find a collectivo to get back to Pátzcuaro. So that's why I hire a driver, and it makes my life a lot easier.
Have you seen the butterflies?
They come in February, the monarch butterflies. Yeah,
It doesn't coincide with Day of the Dead in Michoacan?
it doesn't. No, they return in February.
Okay, great.
And we have many compliments in the chat saying thank you so much for such a lovely talk and bringing your book to life. But there is one more question, which is, do you know of any research on the impact of commercialism and tourism on the tradition of Dia De Los Muertos? And what did the communities think?
Well, that book that I mentioned by Stanley Brandis, he has a section on the effect of tourism. I did not want to quote him, because at the beginning of the book, it's copyright, and it's nothing from the book could be recorded. And since we're recording today, I did not want to be violating his copyright. But he has a section really focused on the effect of tourism. He said the government is also at fault for making it more touristic. And he said that a lot of anthropologists and folklorists, when they do field reports, they try to just act like tourists, or they kind of just don't even omit talking about tourists. And actually taking these photographs wasn't easy not to have any tourists in my photographs. If you look at my photographs, it looks relatively serene and peaceful, which is what I was striving for because I didn't want to have a bunch of tourists. And actually 2 years ago, it rained really hard on the afternoon of November 1st in Pátzcuaro. And when I got to Zinzunzan, it was really muddy. And I had to really be careful walking around so I didn't slip and slide. And I thought, oh, there won't be any people here tomorrow morning because it's going to be pitch black. And you're not going to be able to see as well when it's pitch black and you're only walking around by candlelight. And it was still packed with tourists when I got there at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was amazing. The difference between 2017 and 2018 was shocking. For example, in 2017, if I wanted to go to breakfast, I could immediately get a table. In 2018, I'd have to wait for 20 minutes. In 2017, if I wanted to have lunch, they usually open late for lunch around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I could just walk into this restaurant that I love to eat at and get a table. In 2018, I had to wait an hour. So that just shows you how many more people were there. It was just unbelievable. And the first time I ever went to Pátzcuaro was in 1992. So it's really changed. I mean, there've always been tourists, but it's gotten progressively worse.
Thank you, Ann.
Oh, thank you, Earl. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. I'm gonna sign off. Take care.
Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank
you.
so
This
much.
was wonderful.
Thank you, Ann. Fabulous program.
I don't know. Yeah.
Everybody stay safe, stay well.
You too.
Yes,
Yes.
stay
We'll
safe.
send out a link to the recording.
I call it the crud. Don't let the crud get